Okay. We've got some, I'm not very expert at this new kind of whiteboard. So let's say we start with Abraham.
Do you need another pen?
Yeah, I'll try this blue one here. So Abraham, actually go way back to Adam. But you get these supernatural, superhuman beings, go from Adam to the flood, Noah. The Jews reckon that as 5,000 something years ago. I don't think we can rely on their dates. Maybe for their culture it's reliable, but not for the history of mankind, as I think we'll all be prepared more or less to agree. But then you get these supernatural patriarchs that live 900 years. Those are things they've probably been handed down by oral transmission to them, genealogies that they got from their ancestors. They probably didn't know what to make of those things themselves. They may have been talking about months instead of, they may have been talking about lunar months and not years. Who knows what they meant by those huge lifespans. Or it may have been like Greek mythology, demigods if you want, but I don't think we're prepared to really credit those things too much, except that it is a folk memory of their own genealogy. I think we would go that far. And the flood, I know a lot of people, that people love the flood. That's what I mean. Paul said at one point, I put it in the dedication to my James book, when I was a child, I saw as a child. When I grew up, as through glass darkly. When I grew up, I put away childish things. I wouldn't want you to put them away. I think literature is good, but you have to at some point be prepared to look at the world honestly and see if you're seeing the same things that you've been exposed to by others. I think I've been trying to imply, and I won't keep it up beyond this, that it all comes down to people not being able to distinguish between what is basically poetry or literature and history. They don't see the difference. They don't know what is real history from what is literary history. I'll give you an example from the Muslim world. All Muslims have been taught, based on the Hebrew Bible that Muhammad and his colleagues were working from and operating off of and inheriting, that in general terms, the Jews were referring to these kind of people in the Sinai Peninsula and in the Arabian Peninsula as the descendants of Ishmael. Ishmael seen as the descendant of Abraham's first son and his descendants. So they said, they're our relatives, we're like them, but they're from a different line, genealogical line. They're from Ishmael, the sons of Ishmael. Okay, as the Quran got moving, it's a very, very poetic document written by a tremendously able poet, intoxicating poet, so people who read it blows their mind. In the 20th century, for good or for ill sometimes. Enthusiasm certainly is encouraged, whether it's always a good thing, it's something else again. Everyone then decided that we're all the sons of Ishmael. We're all descendants of Abraham. We're all descendants of Ishmael. Well, you had Coptic Egyptians, you had Syrians, you had Greek people in Alexandria, you had all these different peoples that Islam washed over. Some people may have even been captive. Some people may have been opposing Muslims at that time. But as their generations were absorbed, assimilated, and so on, they all became good Muslims 10 generations down the line. All the memories of who they were. Their parents may have been captured, killed by Muslim armies, Arab armies, and so on. They may have, so you may turn into the very enemy that destroyed your own people, something of what's going on in the Sudan now. But as the myth takes over, the solidarity takes over, you're all the same people. You're all the sons of Ishmael. We see it happening in this melting pot in America here. Although we now still see the different ethnic groups, so we're not all saying that it's all one homogeneous whole. 500 years from now, it may all look like one homogeneous whole. Anyway, so the myth is easier to assimilate than the actual history. I had a professor at college who put this very succinctly: poetry is truer than history. It's not what really did happen, it's what people think happened. That's what it meant. It's what the poet said happened that was the real history, because that's what dominated their view of what history was, not what actually did happen. So if I took the DNA of these peoples who all call themselves sons of Ishmael, I'll guarantee you that 3/4 of them are from some totally different genealogical background. And yet in their mind, they're all descendants of Abraham and Ishmael. That's what I mean about the myth washing over everything. And it's good and it's bad. It produces group solidarity. On the other hand, it produces an untrue view to some extent of history. So you have to be really careful. Okay, so these stories, you know, are ancestors that they thought they might have had. We come down to Abraham. That would be around 3000 or 2500 BC or so. Then we know Abraham has these different children, Ishmael, Isaac, and so on. But the Hebrews, by that point, are cutting loose the other descendants. They're only interested in the chosen line as they see it, the line coming down to their ancestors. They don't care about Ishmael any more than they care about Jacob's brother Esau, who would be the Edomites in the period that we're dealing with, the people in Transjordan, or in the Sinai, or in the what's today the Negev desert. So with Abraham, you come down to the key figure of Jacob, who becomes Israel, according to the biblical account, when he gets God's blessing and so on. It fulfills the promises, takes on a new name, and this name is interesting, Israel. El is God, even in Arabic. Allah comes from El. Is in Hebrew can be a man and can be a future. So normally speaking, it's really Ish in Hebrew. As this is interpreted in the Bible by the poet, man is El, God, and they tell a story about how Jacob wrestled with God. So this word Ra or Sarah or whatever is interpreted in terms of having a struggle with God. And that's a poetic, that's not historical. Because probably what this actually meant was Israel, the same as